Hello everyone, Vulcan here, bringing you my review of episode 6 of RWBY Volume 4. This episode may not have been the longest that the series has seen, and I don't think it was even the longest in this volume, but it was easily the most intense of them. Emotions were very high across the entire cast shown here, particularly Weiss, who is the first character I'll be touching base on in this review. The fight scene that followed Weiss's section of this episode had my heart racing at 88 miles per hour the entire way, and there's a lot to be said about it. To sum things up, the sequence of events appears more or less to be following what I predicted in my last review with Tyrion attacking Ranger. One thing I'm slightly disappointed with is how little screen time Weiss has received in this volume compared to the rest of her teammates. Though I understand that characters like Jean also merit a decent amount of screen time given their importance to the show, Weiss is still a member of Team RWBY, and RWBY is of course the namesake of the series. So I would really appreciate it if we could see more of Atlas, the city, the academy. Weiss being in Atlas right now is a perfect opportunity for all of that, but that being said, there's no denying that what we are getting to see in this volume is more than enough to give us an idea of what the people of Atlas are like. In short, the vast majority of them are arrogant, self-righteous, holier-than-thou, extremely self-centered, and in some cases even crass. I could go on forever bad-mouthing the lot of them, but I'll leave that for another time. The other interesting thing here is the contrast with what we'd seen in the previous episode. Now, in episode 5, we saw almost nothing but faunas, with one exception, that of course being Super Hot Chickness. Oh my god, I hope she's okay. But in this episode, we see only humans. With one exception, wait for it, it'll blow your mind. Weiss first appears in this episode giving out her performance at the charity event, which had been mentioned back in episode 2. I was concerned that something might happen during this event, such as, a White Fang terrorist attack, but something did of course happen, but not at all what I expected. Now, it doesn't come as a surprise to me that the attitude people at the event demonstrated toward what happened at Beacon frustrated Weiss to no end. When she goes to view a painting at Beacon Academy, Henry Marischit introduces himself and shows complete ignorance of what happened, so much that he wasn't even aware of why the event was being held and that it was meant to raise funds in order to assist Vale in its recovery. Though knowing Jacques and how he was quote-unquote struggling for money, I wonder if all proceeds really will go to Vale. Anyways, that doesn't do anything but fuel Weiss's growing rage toward everyone around her and their lack of caring. Of course, Jacques continues to be the asshole that he was in episode 2, being very possessive of Weiss, almost as though he's got eyes on the back of his head. He stops Weiss from walking away from him without even turning. Later, when Weiss ended up lashing out when she heard another woman badmouthing Vale, rather than show concern for his daughter's feelings, all he cared about was his family's public appearance, saying that she's embarrassing the family. Her emotions had gone so out of control that she ended up summoning the Borba Tusk that she'd beaten all the way back in Volume 1. I have a feeling that although Weiss could have unsummoned her apparition, she was so angry that she wanted the attack against the woman to go through. Thankfully, Robo-Daddy steps in before things got bloody, though he further calls out on everyone's stupidity in saying Weiss is the only one making any sense in the room. Ironwood, I gotta say this, Ironwood has seriously come a long way. Where he was once supremely confident in his military power, you can tell he's grown a lot more humble and shows regret over what happened. Bless you, Ironwood. Bless your soul. Moving on to Ranger, there's a lot to be said here. In this episode, we get to know more about Ren's backstory. Early on, we reach what appears to be an abandoned village called Oniyuri. This village did not appear on the map, so everyone but Ren also said that they'd never heard of this place, which prompts Ren to explain that Oniyuri is basically Anima's version of Mountain Glen. It was set up by some of the richest people of Mistral who were dissatisfied with the way the kingdoms were governed. These people even hoped their village would eventually become a kingdom in its own right. Ren admitted his parents were some such people. Of course, it turns out that it had been attacked by Grimm, but that it also hadn't been destroyed by just anyone, as Ren says. This statement makes me think that one person in particular was involved in its destruction. Going back to the letter gate, which mentions that Raven should have fought Team Juniper, and also thinking back to episode 2 with Ren and Nora looking at the symbol left behind by Raven's bandits, there is a possibility Raven may have been directly involved in the death of Ren's parents at least, unlike what I previously thought. The question that this raises, however, is Nora's apparent ignorance of these facts. I'd mentioned in my prediction video regarding Ren and Nora that they came from the same place, but this episode establishes that this is not in fact the case. However, I do still think there's a possibility Raven's bandits were involved in the death of Nora's parents as well, but that it simply could have been a separate event. Later in the episode, Tyrion attacks Ranger, which falls in line with what I had predicted in my review of episode 5. The fight goes much the way anyone would expect. None of Team Ranger showed that they stand even the slightest chance, even were working together against Tyrion. It was both terrifying and exciting to see just how large a gap there is between a seasoned fighter like Tyrion and academy students, who by the way have now spent a decent amount of time on the field, where a day is worth a week at school, although Crow has been making it easier for them. Still, an argument can be made that at this point all of Team Ranger has grown stronger since Volume 3, but the gap between them and the likes of Tyrion is still not insignificant. Now, throughout the fight, one thing that caught my eye as well was how each blow Tyrion dealt on RWBY caused her aura to flare up. Initially, I thought that this meant he had done something to completely dismantle RWBY's aura in one blow. We do, however, see the same effect later in the fight, which could mean one of two things. One, it could just be an effect that the animators decided to implement just to show damage being done to aura. The second possibility may be something to do with Tyrion's abilities. Perhaps it could be his semblance, or perhaps even an assassination technique of some kind that allows him to create cracks in one's aura, creating what I would dub the Achilles heel effect. While the aura remains everywhere else around the body, Tyrion is able to cut a small part of that aura to leave the body exposed, much like Achilles' heel was his weakness, and that hitting it would kill him. But if he hit him anywhere else, he would be unaffected. On a separate note, Tyrion also noted that Jean is interesting. During the fight, his expression toward him showed curiosity, and even later said that Ren and Nora were of no interest to him compared to Jean. With Tyrion, we now have two people who have made comments or hinted at Jean having a massive potential, the other of course being Pyrrha back in Volume 1. Knowing that Remnant is full of stories and legends, among which are those of the Four Maidens and the Silver-Eyed Warriors, I wonder if perhaps Jean also comes from a lineage of warriors that have made legend. Now, it's known that Jean's family comes from a line of heroes, but that being said, I also wonder if there's something more to him. Much like RWBY's Silver Eyes, I find that possible that Jean also has a special trait that sets him apart from regular warriors and hunters, much like how Tyrion set him apart from Ren and Nora, and arguably even RWBY. Tyrion is only fetching RWBY because he's been told to, but he's expressed genuine interest towards Jean. That said, I can't wait to see just how powerful Jean will become in the coming volumes. I also want to point out just how much better this Ranger fight was compared to their previous fight against the Golem Grim in episode 1. The choreography felt much more fluid to me, there were no gravity-defying hovering shenanigans, at least none that I could spot, and it felt really fast-paced. I guess some of that might have to do with how this fight was won between humans and humanoids, wait for it, whereas the previous Ranger fight was against a giant creature, which meant the choreography would have to be a lot different as a necessity. That said, the tension in the scene was also done perfectly. It's also funny that the team employed better strategy compared to episode 1, even though Jean didn't have to say anything in this episode. The best example of this would be when RWBY shot Nora with her lightning dust. Of course, Tyrion had no idea that it would empower Nora the way it did rather than actually hurt her. However, that proved to have no effect on Tyrion because he revealed his scorpion tail, which he used to defend himself. He has a scorpion tail! That seriously blew my mind because the last thing I expected was him being a faunus. It's also the first time that we get to see a faunus that has a trait of an animal that isn't a mammal from up close. In the grand scheme of things though, I think him being a faunus isn't very important because his allegiance is to Salem and Salem alone, who he regards as a goddess. He even refers to the White Fang as, I think, plastic soldiers. So that was really interesting. That really blew my mind. With regards to Tyrion's fighting style, I expected based on the opening that Tyrion's style would be reminiscent of capoeira. While Tyrion did use a lot of acrobatics, they didn't really strike me as capoeira-like, especially if you compared that to Mercury's style. That said, I was still really impressed. The sense of speed in the fight was spectacular, especially when Tyrion dashed behind Jean, and later again when Nora appeared behind Tyrion to perform her strengthened attack, which of course had no effect. By the end of the episode, we finally get to see Crow stepping into the fight to protect RWBY, who had appeared to have actually lost her aura completely by then. Again, this is in line with what I predicted. Although this battle didn't take place in Bigambana, everything else surrounding Team Ranger is certainly leading to a confrontation with Raven. That is, of course, if we assume that Raven has been following either Crow or Ranger up to this point. One thing of note is that Crow's appearance didn't scare Tyrion, which contrasts with Cinder's reaction when Crow appeared to try and protect Amber. To me, this indicates where Cinder stood compared to the rest of Salem's crew, like that wasn't obvious already. Although I think her standing now would be more comparable to Tyrion and evil Obi-Wan, due to her being of course a full-blown maiden at this point, I still think that she's slightly below them and wouldn't actively pick a fight with Crow if she had the choice to. A final comment I want to make on this fight is I was certain that Ruby wouldn't die since Tyrion was sent to capture her alive. However, that contrasts with what Tyrion was about to do to her before Crow got in the way. Also, I have to wonder exactly what Jean was doing just standing around there while Tyrion was about to poison the hell out of Ruby. As of when this is recorded, I'm not aware of the scheduling of the episodes. Though that said, I'm fairly certain, however, that we're now getting into a hiatus, so I'm going to have to live with this cliffhanger for a pretty long time. All in all, though, I would say that I'd be very satisfied if this was what we're being given before the Christmas holiday, and I very thoroughly enjoyed the episode due to how much was going on in it, and also the fight scene was really well done. Next episode will be really intense now, because we can expect a full-on battle between two highly experienced warriors with possibly a third on the way. So that concludes my review. I also want to remind people that that it is possible to see the episode early instead of having to wait for the YouTube release for a whole week. Signing up on the Rooster Teeth website is completely free. You'd only have to worry about spoilers for a day, which isn't bad at all. Also, registering for a first membership is very, very cheap, and I highly recommend it. Like I said before, if you love the series enough, getting a membership is worthwhile. So, like the video if you did, comment your thoughts down below, and of course subscribe to my channel as I would be very appreciative of it, and I will see you soon.